Welcome to another Tabletop Throwdown review with myself, Scott Griffith, and welcome to my table. On it today we have Urbania, a game by Mayfair Games that was designed by Simon Lucian. And you may recognize his name as one of the co-designers of Zolkin, the Mayan calendar game. Urbania is not quite the same. Urbania is a urban renewal game where players are going to be upgrading buildings, influencing specialists, and enacting these big master plans to try and get the most favor for the city. So let's take a look at how the game plays, and then we'll come back and see if it's any good. Urbania. Here is Urbania, set up and ready to go for a 5-player game. So the point of the game is to acquire the most prestige or victory points, kept track up here in a loop. And the way you're going to get these victory points is by upgrading the city the most efficient way, either through just directly upgrading buildings, by controlling the right specialists, or by planning efficiently from these plan cards. So on a player's turn, they're going to do two things. There are two actions, and now you can choose the same action twice, but you can only do two things, and you can do less if you want, but that doesn't ever happen. So one action you can take is to draw cards. Another action would be to upgrade a building. Another action could be to buy a specialist, or to influence a specialist, I guess. And then the fourth action would be to play one of these plan cards. So, let's go ahead and look at these cards and what they do. So in Urbania, there's basically two different types of cards. There are these building cards, and there are these plan cards. We're going to talk about these plan cards later, just because they're special, and they're really for endgame scoring. So the building cards are going to come in one of 6 different colors, which each correspond to a different specialist and a different building type. So the cards are going to have either helmets on them, or coins, or a mixture of both. The helmets are going to be used for building buildings, and the coins are going to be used for buying influence from different workers, or different specialists. So also in this deck, there are cards with multicolored coins and helmets. The multicolored coins are wilds, the multicolored helmets are wild building cards. So when a player decides to take a draw action, they will get to draw 2 cards total. They can draw 1 card from here, they can draw 1 card from this pool of cards, or they can draw 1 plan card, and then they'd get to do another one. You can draw 2 cards from the face up ones and 1 from the face down, or 2 cards from the plan, or any combination therein. So let's now look at the building phase of the game. Here is the map of Urbania, forming a suspiciously nice grid. So when the game is set up, we're going to shuffle these tiles up and then spread them out on the board randomly every time. And they're all going to be put with their old run-down side face up, but this city center here will be upgraded in the new fashion, and so it'll form kind of the seed that you will upgrade from. Whenever you build a building, you're going to have to upgrade from the middle, going outwards. So let's go ahead and look at the buildings specifically. Now that we're closer, you can see that each different type of building has its own shape, color, and symbol here in the middle. There are factories, there are banks, there are hospitals, there are businesses, there are schools, there are parks, and there are residential units. So each color corresponds to a different specialist, which we'll get to in a sec. So, one thing to note is the cost of the building. That's in the upper left-hand side. The cost of helmets it's going to take to upgrade the building. So this tech building, for example, has a cost of 3. So if I want to build this or upgrade this building on my turn, I would discard 3 helmets and get to flip this tile over to its built side. Now, also, I'm going to get 4 victory points for this building, and I'm going to get to draw a card as well. Whenever you see a card icon on the board, you're going to need to draw a card when you flip over the building, which is really helpful for some of these smaller buildings. If you get those played at the beginning of the game, you get a lot more cards in your hand. Life is pretty good. So, when you flip over a building, you will also move up the building marker track, which we'll get to in a sec, but it's very important because we're going to be keeping track of how many buildings have been built for the specialists. So another thing to note are these residential buildings. They kind of have a neutral color, they're blue, and there are no blue building cards. They have wild colors. You basically just have to discard a set of colors. So for this one here, you're going to have to discard 2 of a kind to get 3 points immediately and to draw a card. and then this simply flips over. They're just one and done type buildings. Now, as you build buildings, I couldn't actually have built this one. You're going to have to play adjacent to an already built building in order to upgrade. Okay, so that's enough about buildings. Let's go ahead and look at the building track. So here's the track I was just talking about, and really it's used for two different things. One, it's going to be used for keeping track of the number of buildings that have been built, and it will be used for keeping track of the influence of the specialists. So every time you upgrade a building, you're going to increase the cube one spot. So for example, here the pink cube is on number 2 because we just built a technology building. So this is going to keep track of the number of those buildings that have already been played during the game. Now the discs are a little bit different. They're going to represent the cost of influence. So if I want to influence the parks guy, the green guy, I'm going to have to pay 1 coin to get his influence marker. So when I buy his influence, I will then move him up a tier. Thereby, the next player that wants to influence green will have to pay 2 coins instead of the 1. You can also see here there's the score track that goes up to 50 points, and it comes with nifty cards here that represent the points. So for example, if you get to 50, you hand this to the player and they can keep going, and then if they get around again, they can go to 100 points. Pretty slick to include that in the game. So I just talked about the specialists. Let's talk about them really quick. So here are the different specialists, and you'll notice that they each correlate to a different building type based on color and icon and shape. The shapes being at the bottom and the icons being on the top. Now, when you acquire a specialist, you're going to be paying coin cards from the building cards. We saw those earlier. So you're going to be playing these coins up here to buy the specialist, and the cost will relate to wherever the specialists are on the track. Now, when you buy a specialist, they're going to get moved in front of you. And then at the end of your turn, for however many buildings of the type they represent that have been built, you will get that many points. For example, right now, there is 1 factory and 1 hospital, which means I'll get a total of 2 points at the end of this turn. So as the game progresses, these points will become greater and greater because more buildings will have been built. The thing, though, is that someone else can steal that specialist away from you, and then they would be the ones getting the points. But there are persistent points. Every turn, you're going to keep accruing points that you keep the specialist. And the last action you can take is playing one of these plan cards. And these plan cards are going to be major scoring opportunities at the end of the game. They're going to be hidden from all the players, so your plans are going to be secret. And so the plans come in 3 different varieties. They're either going to be building plans, location plans, or specialist plans. And so the way they work is you will simply count up however many are in the plan, and then multiply by their point value at the bottom. So they can be worth a lot of points. This one here, for example, would be the banking one. So for every bank, you're going to get 6 points. For every school, here, you're going to get 6 points. These location cards are, you're going to count up the number of completed buildings in those locations at the end of the game. So here, the top row, for every completed building in the top row, you're going to get 5 points. Here, for every completed building in the bottom quadrant, you're going to get 4 points. Specialists work the same way. Based on their level, you will get a multiplier bonus for where the specialist ended. For example, here, the teacher. If the teacher ends the game at level 5, you will get 25 points. If the double ones are shared, so you're going to add up the number of levels on the tech guy and the number of levels on the banking guy and get that many points. Alright, well there is Urbania. Now, while I was explaining it, you might be thinking, wait, haven't I seen a game like that before? You know, you have these cards that are face up and you can take 2 of them per turn, and then you're going to be collecting different sets of cards in different colors, and then buying things based on those sets. And then each person's going to have a little hidden information card that's going to show them what they're trying to do that differs from what their opponent's trying to do. Yeah, I've played this game before. What was that? That's right, Ticket to Ride, right? Urbania does feel like Ticket to Ride. It was the first thing I thought when I played the game. This just seems like Ticket to Ride. But after playing it a little more, you realize that the specialists and the way that nothing in the game is yours. You don't build a hospital and it's your hospital. It's just a hospital that gets upgraded. The way those 2 things work really well as a subtle overtone that adds a different tweak of play. So the specialists just add that do I want to make that specialist very valuable? Do I want to kind of hide that and make sure my opponents don't use it? Do I want to start building in this different area so I can get the green specialist up? It adds a very nice subtle overtone to the game that makes it, in my opinion, a little more interesting. So the biggest thing I have to say against this game is the components. The colors are just horrible. I can see from how it looks that it's a beautiful looking game in the sense that the colors all kind of flow together. There isn't any harsh discrepancies, but they're too similar. I don't know if it's going to be able to really translate well over video, but the colors are just too difficult to differentiate. Even just the colors sitting next to each other, is that a brown cube or a light gray brownish cube? Or is that a tan cube or this gray cube? Is this a hospital or a tech center that's the red and pink? And so you have the cards in your hand that are a certain color that match the specialists, but then they also have to match the buildings, which are different colors than the cubes and the discs. And then those plan cards are a monotone shade of blue that's really difficult to see. And so they have icons which help, but ultimately you have to know what those discs are, and the discs just look similar, and it's really hard to tell. And so every time I played so far, the biggest complaint was that this is really hard because the colors look so similar. And so if they would just went with a blue and a yellow and a red and a green, it would be very easy to differentiate. I have no idea how this would play with a colorblind person. I don't think it would be possible. It's just too difficult. So that being said, the game is still playable. The components are fine. It's just, it kind of has that little hurdle. And so after I finish up doing this review, I'm going to go through and Sharpie on, this is the bank disc and this is the library cube, just to help in the gameplay. So it plays very well for the 2 to 5 player range. With 2 players, it can be pretty quick because your turns are pretty short. The biggest time sink in the game is deciding what you're going to do. So as long as you have people that can think on other turns, 4-player games go by very quickly. And because you're all sharing the same building space, the game does end quick with more people. Not that the game is shorter, but just you feel as though the game went by very quickly. I really enjoy the choices in this game. The having to pick between one of those 4 actions, you always end up feeling as though you want 3 actions. You're always going to want to draw cards, build a building, and buy a specialist, but you can't do that. You can only do 2 things. And so that tension makes it a very interesting game. It's not punishing. There's always something to be doing on a turn, which is great, but it's just that itch of like, I wish I could do one more thing. It plays pretty much an hour to an hour and a half. It goes by, like I said, pretty quick. So, for those people that like Ticket to Ride, I would highly suggest this. I personally, at the moment, like Urbania more than Ticket to Ride. Now, I know I just said that. Don't freak out. I still have Ticket to Ride right here. It's not going to go anywhere. Urbania adds just a little bit of a subtle overtone that I enjoy. I kind of get bored with Ticket to Ride. I know it's tense, I know there's stuff going on, but at the same time, all you're doing is either drawing cards or playing cards. Urbania gives you some more choices that are very interesting to me. I will say that the theme doesn't really come through. You don't ever feel as though you're upgrading a city, you just feel as though you're buying the right buildings at the right time. And really the buildings are all the same. There's the same number of each color, there's the same point value for each color. It'd be cool if there were different powers for the different buildings. A bank does different things than a technology building, than a park. So it could use a little development there. But if those things don't bother you, I would highly suggest checking out Urbania. Very enjoyable game. So there you go. Urbania by Simon Lucian by Mayfair Games.